all love Super Smash Bros. For the reveals, but what if every single reveal and every single character was a Mario rep? Yep, what if Smash Brothers was Super Mario Smash Brothers? That's right, we're cutting the roster down to only Mario characters from Smash Ultimate. That gives us 14 Mario characters already in the game and a whopping 72 that we need to add to the roster. Clearly, with a lot of characters, I don't want to waste too much time, but first, I want to do a question of the day. Today's question comes from James Nanatine and states, if Nintendo should start a brand new series, what would Nintendo make? So personally, I think Nintendo needs more online multiplayer games, like maybe even more shooters. With Splatoon entering the fray, I want to see more games like that, but specifically another thing that I would really want to see is a Souls-like game from Nintendo. Nintendo doesn't really have any games that are solely based on real good combat and gives you that difficulty like a Souls-like would, and I would love to see Nintendo's own take on it, not just copying things like Dark Souls and Elden Ring and making it just this creepy, deep, dark game, but instead adding their own flair and their own spin to it, kind of like Another Crab's Treasure, something that's a little different but still has that difficulty and still has that overworld exploration, there's secret bosses defined, and yes, every single boss will take you lots of tries in order to get the parrying down and learning the boss patterns, finding new weapons and gear. I think that would be awesome. So maybe even using the IP of Zelda to get something like that done. Maybe like a Zelda Souls-like game would be awesome, but I wouldn't mind them just making a completely new series with new characters for this, a brand new franchise, a brand new IP. I think it would be great. Also, now we are just 13 days away into the Nintendo Switch 2 Nintendo Direct. So hopefully this video brings you some hype and helps you get through this long next couple of weeks. First character we have is Dixie Kong. We have Donkey, we have Diddy, we have King K. Rool. Let's get Dixie Kong in. She would pretty much play like Diddy Kong, maybe even a clone, but she'd have her own, unique things. She has an electric guitar she could use, or maybe even fly with her hair, and her final smash would be a guitar solo like she does at the end of DKC2 after finishing a level. But overall, I think Dixie Kong would be a great addition, and would play a lot like Diddy Kong, I get that, but still has to be added. With Dixie Kong, you gotta have Funky Kong, right? He's been there since the beginning, and he'd be a lot like DK, using his surfboard though for a lot of his moves, and maybe more barrel attacks where he blasts out of barrels and even as a recovery, or maybe even using his gyrocopter as a recovery, or straight up using the gyrocopter as a final smash where he flies the helicopter and drops things from above. And you know what? Why not throw Cranky Kong in there too? I mean, he had a pretty big role in Tropical Freeze as one of the main characters that Donkey Kong could have with him. He could use his cane and bounce on enemies, or maybe use old school DK things like throwing barrels and stuff, or maybe those springs. His final smash could be the Robo DK from Mario vs. Donkey Kong. I mean, at this point, is there anybody that could beat out Waluigi at being like the first brand new revealed character for the next Smash Bros. Game? Everyone wants him in. He's been memed to death. It has to happen. His moveset could be in a range of different sports equipment from all the Mario sports games and even Mario Party stuff like throwing a dice around or something. It could actually be pretty unique and goofy of a character. His final smash could be him dancing like he does in his destructive dance from Mario DDR, but he has a lot of potential for a character, honestly. Kamek is one of those characters that's definitely a sleeper pick in my opinion. Not a lot of people would think about him being a main character, but he has so many appearances within the main Mario franchise in both 2D and 3D games. Kamek definitely should have his own moveset, from having different wand powers, being able to make enemies and objects appear on stage or maybe even disappear, and flying around with his broomstick. His final smash could be shrinking everyone, making himself bigger like he does to Bowser, making him giant at the end of like every new Super Mario Bros. Game. Another one that still blows my mind how he's not in the game is Captain Toad, or just straight up Toad. Toad is one of the main Mario characters and has been in so many, almost every single game. How does Toad not have a Smash Bros. Moveset? They could come up with tons of things just utilizing other Toads, or of course his Captain Toad moveset, maybe using his pickaxe and other things that he can do in that game like picking up turnips or just making him a Mario Bros. 2 rep could be pretty cool as well. He'd be extremely fast and just really agile. He could use mine carts like Steve. I know people would hate that, but Toadette could also be an alt for Captain Toad as well, which would just make a lot of sense, and his final smash could either be the Toad Brigade from Mario Galaxy all ganging up on you, or the Dragodon from Captain Toad itself, which was the giant dragon that he can control. Okay, this one's a little strange, but why not? The babies appear in the racing games, so I'm sure Nintendo could come up with some type of moveset for Baby Mario, and maybe the alts being all the other baby versions of the characters, and I don't know, maybe they just fight with baby things like rattles and pacifiers they can throw and stuff, and maybe have the help of the Yoshis or something. That could be a thing, and the final smash would be the Super Mario, where he runs around and is able to run on spikes for some reason, but yeah, that could be something, but I don't know how well punching a baby would go over at Nintendo. Birdo would play a lot like Yoshi, but instead of using a tongue, she would just inhale things and even be able to shoot out eggs out of her snout, and it would be the white eggs from Super Mario Bros. 2, so it'd be slightly different than Yoshi, just adding a couple of changes, but most of all, probably being like the Isabelle to Villager. Her final smash would be Robo Birdo from Mario Bros. 2. Boom Boom and Pom Pom are starting to become series staples as well, so what if we could have both of them at the same time, and you could switch out in between them, where Pom Pom would be more projectile based, throwing boomerangs and ninja stars like shurikens, and then Boom Boom would be more power based, spinning around, throwing his arms around, punching, pounding the ground, but they both can also jump in their shells and spin around the stage. So I think they would be a really cool combo. Their final smash could be they both hop on the bullet train from Mario 3D World and run you over while you're strapped to the railroad tracks. Petey Piranha would finally be a character and not a final smash. He would be based off of his Mario Sunshine moveset. He'd be a heavyweight, being able to spit goop all over the stage and also create wind tornadoes with his palms. But he also can use his cages like he does in his final smash and his boss battle from Brawl, so I think that could probably carry over to some part of his moveset, or maybe some type of ink explosion for his final smash where he just detonates. King Boo will be the Luigi's Mansion version, and that version only. He'll be able to disappear, reappear, and he'll also be a heavyweight as well, but he can make projectiles appear with his magic and his crown, and also shoot lightning down from the sky, and even use portrait frames as lots of his attacks. Maybe even his final smash being able to trap the opponent in the frame and then zap it and destroy it with lightning. And if we have King Boo, we gotta have EGAD, and I'm really hoping that if Luigi doesn't have a Luigi's Mansion moveset in the next Smash, that at least EGAD could. He could use all the Poltergust moves that Luigi does in the game, and that's his main basis of attacks, using all the different elemental properties from the first game, and moves and mechanics from the third game, like the plunger shot. He could also, for his final smash, use the Super Suction from Luigi's Mansion 3, or maybe some type of callback to the first game, where he actually puts the enemy player in a frame like King Boo, but then puts it into his own mansion or something, and then the mansion blows up. I don't know, it's something Smash would do. King Bob-omb would make an appearance, and he'd also be a heavyweight, throw bombs, and even throw fighters as far as he possibly could. His throws would be probably the best in the game, because that's what he's known for. As far as everything else, probably just Bob-omb based moves, throwing out different types of Bob-ombs throughout the series, and even exploding himself. Maybe that's exactly what his final smash is, just a giant detonation that just blows everybody off the stage. Nabbit is one of those characters that I can't explain why he's so relevant in Mario games still, but he is, so throw him in Smash. Maybe he has the ability to just steal a lot of things and throw them in his sack of goodies, or maybe his sack of goodies is actually able to throw out random items and even use them on himself or against enemies. He could trap enemies in the bag and use them as grabs and throws, and he's extremely fast. His final smash could be a giant bag, or he empties tons of things from his bag that are like tons of explosive items that can just blow up everybody on the stage. Paper Mario is my personal biggest wish for the next Smash Bros. Game. I think he has some limitless potential, pulling from all his past Paper Mario games, from all his transformations that he can turn into, or maybe even using some of his partners from the past games as well, would be absolutely perfect. There's not much else to say because, I mean, if you just think about the past games, there's just limitless potential. I just would love to see a Mario moveset that also uses a hammer for once, because it's like one of Mario's signature items. Plus, his final smash could be something from like the first game, like the Star Spirits Beam, or maybe even the Peach Beam, or using the Crystal Stars for some type of special attack from the Thousand-Year Door. And come on, besides Waluigi, does anybody else disagree that Pauline's probably going to be one of the first characters revealed for the next Smash Bros. Game? I mean, Nintendo loves this character now, and she's in pretty much everything with all the spin-offs. She's going to have a whole moveset based on singing, and you know it, and she's going to carry that microphone around, maybe even use a microphone stand for her attacks, and probably send out music notes as some type of projectile. And for her final smash, she'll do nothing else besides singing her one-hit wonder, Jump Up Superstar, and maybe throwing some type of celebration, throwing everybody into a crowd like a mosh pit as she's singing or something. And that's our first batch of characters, mostly consisting of main characters that a lot of people have been asking for. But for the next category, I want to move on to enemies, because if we can get Piranha Plant, I'm sure we can get some other enemies as well. First one being Goomba. This is the iconic Mario character, so it only makes sense if Goomba could actually get into the game. He would be based off of different Goombas from the different franchises having different abilities, whether it be the Goomba shoe, maybe a spiked helmet, or referencing other Paper Mario characters like the partners Goombario and even Goombella. And I can definitely see his final smash referencing Goomba King. Hammer Bro is one of my favorite Mario enemies ever, and I love the different variations, and they could actually use all of them within one's moveset. So maybe he's like Army Bro or something, and he has the capabilities of using all the other Bro's abilities, such as Fire Bro, Ice Bro. It would be really cool. Even Boomerang Bro could be tossed in there, and being able to throw all these different projectiles and change them with the press of a button could be really cool. And maybe his final smash actually references Army Bro from Super Princess Peach, or maybe all the Bros come together for one giant super attack. Koopa Troopa is another one of those series staple enemies, and I feel like there's a lot that they could do with movesets based on shells. They could use a lot of shells, maybe even the ones from Mario Kart, like a red, green, maybe even a spiny blue shell, or maybe just the blue shell from New Super Mario Bros., allowing you to actually control yourself while in the shell and move around the stage. There could be a lot with this, and maybe he's a pretty good defensive character, being able to block a lot of attacks because of this. But anyways, I think the final smash could even be the blue shell if they wanted to just save it for that, where it just absolutely blows everybody up on the stage. Dry Bones is here. Odyssey Central can be relieved. But Dry Bones would pretty much be like Koopa Troopa, but also have the option to throw a lot of projectiles based on his body. Maybe he can throw different parts of his body instead of just bones, like throwing his head out that you can then use for combos by controlling the head separately. Maybe stuff like that could be really cool, or just straight up playing dead in order to dodge enemy attacks, and maybe take very minimal damage while you're in your dead state for a little short while. But for his final smash, maybe he builds himself together to be Dry Bowser, and there's some type of attack with that, which would be pretty cool. Maybe for Buzzy Beetle, it could be a combination of both Buzzy Beetle and the Spinies, and maybe he can change different appearances of his shell by a certain button press, kind of changing his attributes. With the Smooth Shell, he can roll around the stage really fast and use it as a really good defensive measure, and for the Spike Shell, maybe he can fire spikes out or turn into a spiked ball and roll across the stage as well, and maybe he can even grow and use arms like the Buster Beetles from Mario Bros. 3, where he can pick up and throw blocks as projectiles. So, believe it or not, an enemy as basic as the Buzzy Beetle could actually have an interesting moveset. Spike is also an enemy moving his way up to be a main character for a lot of Mario spin-off games. He can spit out a lot of different projectiles, from spiked balls to spiked pillars, and they could maybe even add a couple of new things as well that he could spit up and throw. And maybe it depends on how you throw it, it changes the way it comes out, so there's different ways that you can switch up your approaches. There could be a lot with him just straight up throwing things up, and I think they could make something really interesting out of it. For his final smash, maybe he grows into a monstrous size and references one of the Paper Mario games like Tubba Blubba from 64, or maybe even Macho Grubba from the Thousand Year Door. For Boo, he'd be very similar to King Boo, but more on a basic level, being able to pull from the different Boos from the various different games. Maybe being able to turn into a Peepa or a surface Boo, like a platform Boo, being able to ride across the platform sticking to it, mostly using lots of sneak attacks, or maybe even pulling from like the Bomb Boos from Super Mario Galaxy. But for the final smash, I can see a bunch of Boos coming together to form Boo Losses from Luigi's Mansion, and maybe he bounces across the stage smashing opponents. Wiggler could have a unique concept, where he has two separate movesets based on whether he's happy or in rage mode. And in rage mode, he just has these super powerful strong attacks, but you have to build your rage meter by taking damage. And once you take a certain amount of damage, yeah, his rage will be through the roof. Kind of like the extra wing for Sephiroth, or of course Kazuya's rage mode. I could see him also being able to transform into Flutter in order to recover and fly up into the air. And for his final smash, maybe it's just the ultimate rage rampage, where he grows and gets super angry and just runs everybody over. I would love to see Chargin' Chuck maybe reference sports games as well, like Waluigi would, throwing footballs, maybe kicking soccer balls, and maybe even hitting golf balls. Maybe he would just simply reference the sports of the Mushroom Kingdom, and maybe some of those balls that he actually throws or kicks can actually detonate, like the bomb soccer balls from Mario 3D World. For his final smash, it could maybe be the Chargin' Chuck Brigade from Mario & Luigi Paper Jam, where a whole team of Chargin' Chucks rushes the players. Monty Mole could be a combination of Monty Mole and Rocky Wrench, being able to tunnel underground and throw random items out once he pops up, or maybe just throw wrenches. For his final smash, he can use the Monty Tank from New Super Mario Bros. DS, where he's able to just shoot out tons of bullet bills and bob-ombs all over the stage, or maybe they can integrate that into some part of a moveset, giving him maybe a small tank that he can use. Lakitu will have a bag of tricks, literally being able to grab into his cloud and throw out different enemies like Spinies and maybe even other enemies like Goombas and Koopa Troopas. Maybe he can use his fishing hook and he can even pop in and out of the cloud if he wants and just use it as a vehicle, or get knocked out of the cloud and have to wait for it to recharge again. And his final smash could be him turning into Lakathunder from New Super Mario Bros. DS and raining lightning all over the stage. Ninja is another Mario enemy making his way into the main cast, and he can run super fast and jump super high. He'll be able to throw ninja stars and even use decoys in order to escape and hide by going invisible for a short amount of time. For his final smash, he can use Ninja Barrage and summon a ton of ninjas in order to jump the enemy, or simply create a giant shuriken to throw at a single player. Sumo Bro or Sledge Bro could work out pretty well. They would clearly be a heavyweight, and every time they stomp, you can actually shake the ground, freezing your opponents for a short amount of time. You can also throw giant hammer tosses just like a Sledge Bro. I know they're not exactly the same, but still, you gotta give him some variety. And maybe as a Sumo Bro, he's able to actually do sumo moves by grabbing and having some really good throws and pummels. For his final smash, he will have a 1v1 sumo match showdown against a single player. Why not throw in some Super Mario Odyssey reps, like the Brutals, but not all of them as one slot. They could all be very different. Topper can throw tons of spiked hats, and I mean tons of them, and maybe you can roll them, throw them in the air, kind of similar to the way Mario simply throws his hat in Super Mario Odyssey. So yeah, you can bounce them off things and they can actually return like a boomerang. You can hide in them and maybe do like magician hat tricks, or maybe just straight up pull things out of your hat and use them as projectiles like bombs or something. Could work pretty cool. Now the final smash will probably be the same for all the Brutals, and that could be Madame Brood comes in and they all just jump the other player, or the Mecha Brutal actually comes in and they all control it in order to stomp on a player, which definitely sounds most likely. Having the star-powered Mecha Brutal just charging other players already sounds terrifying. Harriet will also be able to throw her hat, but she can also jump into it and fly around like a UFO, and also drop things out of the bottom like bombs that could detonate on other players, and she can use her braids in order to fight at distance as well. And of course, the UFO hat would also work great as a recovery tool. Spewert's main ability will be able to throw up. Yeah, he'll have spit up attacks, which sounds crazy, but yeah, he can leave trails of throw up that either slows enemies down or straight up does damage to them, and he can even spin around the stage in his hat. He'll be able to jump in his hat and actually control himself around the bottom of the stage, spinning around and leaving goop everywhere, but he can't do it for a super long time. He'll also probably fight as a heavyweight since he's the bigger of the four characters. Just like Mario's moveset in Odyssey, Rango will be able to throw his head out and actually bounce off of it in order to gain height and just do different switch-ups. He can actually throw out his hat and have retractable spikes as well that might be able to stick to another player and can be called back at any time. Kind of think of Kung Lao from Mortal Kombat if you've ever played that game. Just tons of spiked hat tricks that he can do, like throwing it across the ground or just throwing it around and catching it. He'll also have a move where he can bounce around the stage with it while the spikes are active. Ukikis could kind of play like Diddy Kong, of course, but they have some unique properties. For one, they actually have the ability to eat these different types of watermelon from Yoshi's Island and actually have different effects depending on the watermelon that they eat. For instance, the regular watermelon, they can shoot watermelon seeds out just like a machine gun shooting out bullets pretty much, and you have fire and ice watermelons that give you fire and ice breath, respectively. And the final smash could be the Ukiki attack, where tons of them will just jump out of trees and start attacking a single player. And last but not least, of course, I didn't forget about Shy Guy, and I thought we could maybe combine both Shy Guy and Sniffits into one kind of moveset, where they can actually switch their mask. And if he's a Shy Guy mask, he'll have the abilities like the different Shy Guys, such as the Spear Guys, the Pedal Guys, the Stilt Guys, and maybe even the Propeller Guys from past games like Yoshi's Island and Paper Mario. But if he has a Sniffit mask, he'll be able to actually fire projectiles out of his mask. Or maybe it's just one simple attack, such as a down B or something, where he'll just quickly switch his mask and start firing projectiles as a Sniffit. Either way, I think Shy Guy could be really cool, and he's definitely one of the main Mario characters and enemies within the franchise. And for his final smash, he could pull a Mario Power Tennis, where the camera's behind him and he'll walk up to a player and take off his mask and the player just dies from it. That would just be hilarious. And this is now the updated roster with all of the enemies added. I'm sorry if your favorite enemy didn't get added. That's pretty much all I could do without running out of room, because there's still tons of other characters from different Mario franchises that we have to cover first. Also, we're about halfway through the video right now, so check to see if you're subscribed. If you're not, feel free to leave a like and subscribe to stay up to date on all types of videos like this in the future, as this video took a while to make. Thank you for your support, and back to the video. Next Next up is our batch of side characters, and of course starting it off we gotta go with Topanga. This is one of the very first side characters and main villains that we had earlier on from Mario Land. Maybe he has a different moveset depending on whether he's in or outside of his ship, and he can use a laser gun while on the ground, and they're probably gonna have to make up a lot more for his moveset. But for his final smash, maybe his ship just detonates or something. What about Bowser from Super Mario Bros. 2? He could just simply be the bomb guy, or like the Bomberman from Mario Universe, where he could just throw different types of bombs out, and different timed bombs, or different bombs with different effects, maybe like even elemental properties could be pretty cool. For his final smash, maybe he throws a Giga Bomb. Yeah, I'm talking about the one from Mario Kart Tour. Pretty random stretch, but it'd be cool to see. What about Wart from Mario Bros. 2? Maybe he's just literally the subcom rep, where he's able to trap fighters in bubbles and also use everything else that you could pretty much do in that game, being able to pick up different vegetables out of the ground and throw them. Obviously he hates them, so he'll be chucking everything he can away from himself. Pretty much what Princess Peach can do for her moveset, but think even more ambitious. Pulling out all types of random and crazy items would be super cool. And for his final smash, maybe one giant bubble and he pops it, like the dirty bubble from SpongeBob or something. This is a really strange character, especially since it doesn't really have a proper name besides Penguin, but you know what, they appear in a lot of Mario games, so what if they were similar to the Penguin suit from New Super Mario Bros. Wii, where you're actually able to throw out ice and maybe even summon other penguins and slide on your stomach across the stage. It could actually make for a pretty fun moveset, or maybe you're even able to use the baby penguins from Mario 64, and that would work awesome for a final smash where maybe the penguin walks to the edge and drops the baby penguin off the cliff and it falls down and lands on one of the players. Would be so hilarious. Toadsworth is a strange character to have as well because he's an old man, but if you have Cranky Kong, why not Toadsworth? And he definitely needs more appearances in mainline games. Maybe he can use his cane and maybe the help of other Toads. Maybe that's pretty much his whole moveset, is using the tons of other Toads throughout the series as part of his moveset. That would be pretty cool, but for his final smash would probably be some type of Toad attack or maybe even the Toad Brigade from Mario Galaxy. Piantas are known for their abilities to chuck and throw things. I mean, there's a whole side stage in Mario Sunshine where you literally just get chucked by different piantas, so maybe their throws are their main part of their moveset, almost like a sumo mentality. But they also are known for their fruit vendors, so maybe they can actually throw different types of fruits that have different types of effects when they hit you and bounce around the stage in different ways. Like the spiky durian would definitely be the strongest for sure. For their final smash, maybe they chuck you super far into the sun and you just blow up. Yeah, these final smashes are getting harder and harder. I mean, technically, maybe they could chuck you into the volcano at Mount Corona. That would make a lot more sense than the sun. Just thinking of Inoki being revealed in Smash makes me laugh, but it's the other main character of Race from Super Mario Sunshine. Maybe she also, just like the Piantas, has the ability to use fruit as part of her moveset, but also shells in some capacity. I don't really know how that would do, but I guess her defense would be extremely high, and maybe she'd be extremely quick on her feet. And she can maybe just use different references from Super Mario Sunshine, maybe even using some of the enemies as part of her moveset, or spreading ink, I'm not really sure. But for her final smash, maybe something with the fruit basket, maybe just chucking you in a basket full of fruit and shaking you up and then throwing you out or something. Maybe dragging you deep underwater and throwing you into Ely Mouth. That would be terrifying. Another strange character would be El Piantissimo. He's extremely fast and would play kind of similar to Mario and have some Pianta aspects to him as well, but he'd be known for speed. And maybe his moveset is based on kind of Mario Sunshine's ability to dive and flip and just being a parkour character overall, spinning, flipping, twirling, and even rolling like he could in Mario Odyssey. Something like that could be really cool for his moveset. But for Final Smash, maybe it's just a race to the finish where he'll race you, beat you, and then smack you with the pole at the end or something. Look, I know this is cheating because Luma is technically already in the game, with Rosalina and Luma as a pair, but what about Luma by himself? And what if it was the Luma that Mario actually had with him his entire adventure? That would be pretty cool, where his moveset could be heavily expanded, maybe even transforming into Monstars to fling himself into enemies or even just to recover, or using Pool Stars as part of the moveset, and just star pieces could be used or thrown, or star bits could be thrown out, kind of like he already does with Rosalina, or maybe even pulling from other Lumas in the pack, like the Hungry Lumas, just sucking in players and spitting them out, or transforming into a planet. That would definitely be the final smash. Transform! And it just transforms into a whole black hole or something and sucks everybody in. That would be crazy. Now, Honey Queen is a weird addition, but she was in Mario Kart 7, so she can drive a kart with the gang. She definitely could square up and fight with them if they just made her a lot smaller, kind of like her Mario Kart 7 version. Obviously, she would be a heavyweight, but she can also fly around, which makes her pretty unique because of that. Maybe all of her attacks are based in honey, or maybe she has a wand that allows her to use honey attacks, leaving traps on the stage that can stick to enemies and trap them onto the stage, or maybe she just straight up stings enemies or something like that and uses her stingers or her bee army in order to fight with her as well. And for her final smash, could be her crashing down from the sky, kind of like Plessy does in Bowser's Fury. Yes, you're not saying things, I know it's weird, but Guillermo from Super Mario Galaxy. He could have the ability to throw different types of bombs and throw trash, maybe? Or something with bombing trash, and maybe he can use, you know what, I don't know. I had this on my list, and I don't even know why, so sure, Guillermo. But his final smash could be that giant Mecha Bowser from Toy Time Galaxy. I actually had a really neat idea with the Sprixies, where they could use their different tools in order to build things or even attack with them. Now, each Sprixie actually has a different tool that she uses to build a clear pipe into the next world in Mario 3D World. So what if you could switch between all of them, or one would come out and use their tool when you pressed a certain button? What if they actually used their tools to reference Mario Maker? Yes, what if a lot of their attacks were based on Mario Maker, where they place certain things down or bricks or just kind of built on the stage, kind of like Minecraft? Would be pretty cool. And for their final smash, they'll all jump an enemy with all their tools and beat them to death with it or something. I don't know. Plessy will be able to slide across the stage and actually do tons of belly flops and kind of just be like a giant heavyweight Yoshi in a way, and have different moves like that, maybe even using his tail to hit enemies. His final smash could also be that ending to Bowser's Fury, where he just drops out of the sky slowly and slams on Bowser. If Mario's not going to be able to use Cappy as part of his moveset, why not just use Cappy himself? He can actually capture a fighter and control them for a short while, or maybe just straight pummel themselves and deal damage to the same player. Maybe he uses random enemy captures as well to fight, like transforming into a Goomba or a Koopa Troopa for different attacks would be really cool, and that way he could kind of reference all the different Bowser Army enemies, which could be really cool for one total moveset, and maybe even reference some enemies from Mario Odyssey exclusively as well. And for his final smash, maybe he just captures an enemy and jumps off the ledge with them, immediately killing them. Would be so funny. Shavarian could be pretty cool. He'd be a heavyweight that can also take a punch, and he can bounce and roll around, and every time he rolls or bounces, if he bumps into you, he deals damage. He can cause shock waves on the ground. That could be pretty cool. Time your button presses right, you can bounce even higher and maybe continue combos. And for his final smash, maybe it throws you on a bowling alley and he comes bouncing down the lane. For a Volbanen, maybe they can just use different food items in order to attack, kind of like chefs, where they can like throw different fruits and vegetables, and they're all polygonal, just like obviously the Luncheon Kingdom from Super Mario Odyssey. But they can also stick to the ground and fling forward, or even stick to another player and fling them off the stage, which could be pretty violent, stabbing people with forks, but it would look pretty cool, let's be honest. And for the final smash, maybe they pick you up and throw you into a giant pot, and of course you get thrown up on by Cookatiel. Poochie would be a pretty interesting addition for the Yoshi cast, because outside of Yoshi, who else do you really have? Poochie could just have a dog-based moveset, where he throws things out of his mouth and fetches them, or maybe tosses a frisbee. I don't really know what else they could do, maybe just pulling from things from Yoshi's Island, maybe he can have like Shy Guy attacks or something like that, but his final smash could be something where he starts digging in the ground and digs up like a bomb or something and it blows up the opponent. And finally, we have another dog with Polterpup, where he can have a dog-based moveset as well, but also focus on ghost properties, like appearing and disappearing, and also stealing things from other players, which he does in the game. So maybe he can actually steal an item from everybody, kind of like Kirby, but it's a different type of item, or something like that, I don't know. Or maybe he can even possess a player for a short amount of time, or use moves that actually bring out the ghost from the first game, would be really cool. Or maybe some portrait ghost from the third game, or just some ghosts from Dark Moon, I don't really care. But just pulling out some ghosts and using them as haunt tactics could be pretty cool. For his final smash, maybe he turns into a scary ghost, or like the Dark Moon comes out and shatters and then he just turns evil. That would be crazy. And this is the roster with all the side characters, and that leaves one more category I want to cover to fill the rest of the roster, and that's RPG characters. Don't worry, I can feel your anxiety through the computer of Geno not being on this list, but he's definitely here as one of the first RPG characters that deserve a spot. His abilities would be pulled straight from the game, like his beams and arm cannons, and he can even turn into a cannon and blast on the stage. It'd be really cool too if Geno's whirl attack could have a critical effect, dealing 9,999 damage and just immediately killing somebody, but it's like less than 1% chance of happening. And for his final smash, it can be the shooting star shot from Mario RPG's remake. Mallow will be able to hit you with a bunch of random items like canes and even frying pans and just random stuff, and also be able to have storm status effects like shooting lightning from the sky, maybe even making tornadoes form or making it foggy on stage. And he has lots of healing factors as well, like his final smash could just be one big healing rainbow or thunderstorm, where the rainbow would heal him instantly or the thunderstorm would strike everybody with a big bolt of lightning. I think the Axum Rangers could be really cool if you could switch between all 5 of them. Now, their movesets would be pretty much the same, but have some slight different effects. For instance, the yellow one is about defense and power and is a lot slower, where you can switch to Axum Black to be a lot faster, and you can switch to Axum Pink for actually some heals. Red is all around basic, but green is able to use some magic and throw projectiles. I think that would make for a really cool group of characters. And of course, for the final smash, they would be able to use their ship, the Blade, by blasting a giant laser at your enemy. Smithy would be pretty cool because he actually has the ability to change and warp his head, which actually drastically changes his attacks. Like, for instance, he can make his head a tank where he can fire projectiles, or even give himself a wizard head where he can use magic attacks. And he has so many different forms that might increase defense, power, heal him, or even give him speed, and I feel like they can utilize all of these for Smash Bros. Moveset. And maybe for his final smash, he calls in Exor, which actually dives from the sky and stabs another player, which sounds brutal, but it'd be pretty cool. Maybe just splitting the entire stage and just destroying everything. Popple, coming from Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, could play like Nabbit. With his bag of tricks, he could throw out random items and even throw hammers, and maybe he actually can steal certain things from certain players, like certain abilities or maybe a specific item from their respective game that could help them within battle. And for Final Smash, you can have the bag emptied, where he just empties out his bag and tons of random debris just falls all over the player. And I'm talking about crazy things, like maybe even the piano from Mario 64 just drops out. Cackletta will have a rage mode, but it will technically be triggered by a rage meter, which means she can charge it or build it up, kind of like Cloud's limit. And when she feels this, she can actually transform into her ugly self and use even more lightning and even new attacks like warp holes in the ground to drop people in. She'll even be able to use duplication attacks, leaving clones of her on the stage. And for her final smash will be Cackletta's soul, where maybe she'll inhale you and you'll have to get destroyed by her soul or something from the inside. Prince Peasley would play like a typical sword fighting character, but with some slight differences and references to the Bean Bean Kingdom. Maybe he can fly around on his bean board and also jump on and off of it whenever he wants, and he can throw beans as projectiles, and also have maybe different beans for status effects that you could eat in the game, but he uses them for his moveset. And maybe he has the ability to turn into Dragaho-Ho, the cursed form that Cackletta put him in, or that could just be his final smash. Queen Bean, I know like a lot of these characters could also have a rage mode, or at least 2 different forms. Maybe one form is just her big plump self, where she's able to bounce other characters away or have a lot of defense, but then she can switch to her rage mode, which allows her to be more offensive. This is where her attacks are more power based, where she can cause shockwaves across the ground, even spit out beans, and yes, even punch really hard. For her final smash, maybe it's a combo attack with Prince Peasley. Princess Shroob could be very unique. She has a whole army of Shroobs at her disposal, so maybe she can use different Shroobs from the game to actually fight for her, like the Shrooboid Brat, or maybe even Commander Shroob and his army, where she can send UFOs out, or maybe even use her throne chair, where she's able to have a giant mech and protected by shields for a short amount of time. Maybe for her final smash, she can send in the Shroob Mothership, or maybe even call in her older sister to attack in her monstrous form. Midbus would work as a variant of Bowser in a way. I mean, that's kind of what he's meant to be in Bowser's Inside Story, as like the anti-Bowser, but he does play different. He does lots of belly flops and rolls around since he's a big armadillo, well, armadillo pig hybrid thing, but he also has different projectiles he can throw, like these giant ball and chains, and he has really strong charged up punches. Not to mention, it'd be really cool if we could switch to his ice form on and off if he wanted to as well, which gives him snowball projectiles and even little snowmen henchmen. For his final smash, it could be Ice Midbus, where he rolls in on a giant snowball and it has a bomb inside, and after you get trapped inside, the whole snowball just detonates and explodes. Fawful has a lot of potential and has a lot of appearances in the Mario and Luigi franchise, so maybe he pulls from Superstar Saga where he has his weird get-up suit and he uses electricity attacks and even different electronics that he's built, or maybe he uses his Bowser and Side Stories moveset with tons of different robots at his disposal that he's created, and even a jetpack that he uses to fire out projectiles. Now his final smash would probably be the Dark Star Fawful variant when he was inside the body of Dark Star. That would be pretty cool, or maybe he uses his Dark Castle to just crush somebody. Dark Bowser or Dark Star Bowser would be really cool and actually be kind of a clone of Bowser, but with new attacks, of course, like some of his Dark Star magic, being able to trap enemies in dark cages or rain dark fireballs from the sky, even fire them out of his hands. He can also control the Dark Bowser army, which he could also use in his moveset, so maybe lots of his moveset is based off of the enemy special moves that Bowser has in game, like utilizing the Goombas, Koopa Troopas, and Shy Guys. He would essentially be the Bowser from Bowser's Inside Story, having a moveset that represents that game more, which Bowser should already have, but still, I think that would be really awesome for him to have. His final smash could be similar to Fawful's, where he inhales you and you get attacked by Dark Star Fawful inside. Or maybe the Dark Star in its original form starts beating you up once you get inside. Phantasma will be able to transform back and forth from the bat form to his normal Dream World form. He can use his Nightmare Orbs to fire up his dream energy and fire them as projectiles or use them as physical attacks, or he can choose to use them to increase his own status effects. For instance, he could eat them, giving himself health, or maybe increasing his speed, or his defense, or even his power. He'll have lots of duplication and bat transformation attacks, but his final smash would probably involve the Dream Stone in some capacity. Out of all the partners from the Paper Mario franchise, Vivian makes the most sense as they're the only original character that doesn't represent an already established enemy. So I feel like Vivian's inclusion would be really cool, and the fact that almost everyone in the world loves Vivian as a partner in Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door definitely is an easy pick. Vivian will mostly use fire magic and also veils in order to hide underneath the stage or somewhere out of existence. So lots of attacks where Vivian's appearing and disappearing. And then for the final smash, Vivian can call the Sisters of the Shadow Sirens in order for a triple combo attack. Next up, we have Lord Crump, the leader of the X-Naut army. So obviously he would use X-Nauts as part of his moveset, and I think the battle you have with him at Key Hall Key would be the best example for what he could do. Like riding them as they're a giant rolling ball, or using them in order to jump another enemy, or just having them hang from the ceiling and drop things down. Maybe he could put up a wall of them in order to protect himself, or just throw them out as a projectile. He could also use one of his Magnus von Grapple suits, or maybe that's just his final smash. Sir Grotus, which is the leader of the X-Nauts, could actually still utilize moves from the X-Naut army, or maybe even Lord Crump as part of his moveset, but he uses lots of shields in the game, and shoots lasers and lightning projectiles from his staff. So I can see his moveset consisting mostly of defensive maneuvers, and also utilizing different members of the X-Naut army, not just the foot soldiers, but also some of the creepy creatures as well. Maybe for his final smash, he'll call to the moon where his supercomputer tech is at, and it will fire a giant laser from the moon base and absolutely obliterate everybody on stage. Super Paper Mario has a lot of characters to choose from, but personally I think Dementio is one of the more interesting ones for sure. Not just being the true final boss of the game, but also just being such a trickster and having such a great character. He could teleport around the stage and use different magic attacks and maybe represent paper, because he kind of warps in and out of reality in 2D and back into 3D. So maybe that's his whole gimmick, is just warping around using magical paper attacks. And for his final smash, of course, he'd use the pure hearts in order to turn into Super Dementio. What about Count Bleck? I think Count Bleck also has a really good character, and he has a true come-to-heart moment at the end of the game, so maybe he actually has a moveset that works with both him and Teepee as her butterfly form, where she's also able to use paper attacks, but he has lots of magical appearing and disappearing attacks just like Dementio as well. And for his final smash, maybe he calls in his band of bad guys, like Mimi, O-Chunks, and maybe even brings in Mr. L and his Brobot. And last but not least, I wanted to have at least one character from Mario & Luigi Brothership, and to me, it was a no-doubter to be the Extension Core. I think they would work great as a trio of characters, kind of like the Pokemon Trainer, where you can switch between them. They all have very different attacks, where 10 is based on throwing projectiles and using laser beams, where X is based on flying around and using status effects, and the strength comes from Shun, who's just super powerful, so lots of his attacks will do tons of damage. But of course, X will be fast, Shun will be slow, and 10 will be all around. For their final smash, they also have a triple attack that they use, or maybe the invincible plug, which gives them the ability to be invincible for a short while and then explode, blowing up everybody on the stage. But I like their trio attack, it seemed to work the best, so having a cool little combo attack for a final smash scene would be really cool. Those are all 72 new fighters from the Mario universe that could be added into Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I know some of these maybe didn't make the most sense, but they were characters that I either really loved or I thought would be really fun to see in Smash regardless. I know there's some series that people still may be a little upset that I didn't cover. For instance, there's other Paper Mario partners and characters, including other Donkey Kong characters like Chunky, Tiny, Kiddy, and Lanky, and even the entire WarioWare crew. Some of them could have got additions, but they were stretching a little too far outside the Mario universe, and I wanted to keep it back into Mario primarily. This was honestly probably one of my most ambitious projects on the channel, so if you enjoyed the video, please make sure you leave a like and subscribe. It helps out way more than you think, and also comment down below which one of these characters would you want to main the most. Personally, it would definitely be between Paper Mario and Hammer Bro. The Hammer Bro has always been one of my favorite enemies, and I've always wanted to see a Paper Mario full-blown moveset, maybe with him even using his partners in the game, so I'm hoping that happens one day. But thank you so much for tuning in, and like always, I'll see you all on the next one. See ya, guys.